Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I'm Dr. Andrew Scaff. He is Dr. Michael Werman, Esquire. On today's show, we'll get to our NFL's Week 2 preview, and we'll talk about the now resurgent Kansas City Royals, looking good once again somehow. And we'll talk about the Chiefs' victory over Baltimore in Week 1. But we'll start where we tend to start in the NFL seasons going on with our feelings from week 1 in the NFL, Mike. Now, I usually like to try to, ask you sort of like psychological sort of questions, like sometimes anyway, about like how you chose to watch the games or what you were looking for when you watched the first week's games. Were you more interested in seeing what the rookie quarterbacks were going to do, or just to see like in general like how teams were going to, like Aaron Rodgers was going to come out and play after missing most of the season, almost an entire season, or maybe something about like the around the Tyreek Hill incident before the Miami game, where like just wanted to see how he would play after another incident with the law. What were you looking for most going into week 1, and then yeah, what did you find interesting then after seeing week 1?
Well, I'm always kind of interested to see if teams are, I don't know, if teams treat week 1 as like another preseason game where they just are trying to get their feet wet and just trying to because a lot of teams don't play their starters very much in the preseason, and they, like Aaron Rodgers, he didn't play in the preseason, and some other of the other major players didn't do much in the preseason either. But some
Yeah,
teams like the Chiefs and the Ravens they both use the preseason as a tune-up for that first game, and they usually do very well in the first game. And in this case, the Chiefs ended up getting the better of the Ravens just barely. But um, it seems like the teams that start slowly, usually that seems like now started slowly again, like Cincinnati has started slowly the last few years, and we sometimes think it's because of injury to Joe Burrow or to somebody, but it seems like maybe that's just a pattern of how they come out of the gate and do things. So it's, I guess I was just interested in seeing if, I had no real idea what to expect, I guess. And the
yeah.
first week's always very surprising, and like you get some surprising results, but then you get some other things that say, okay, yeah, we know the 49ers are going to be good. We know the Chiefs are probably going to be fine, or there weren't a whole lot of upsets other than the Cincinnati New England game, really.
Mhm.
But I was also interested in seeing how like Caleb Williams was going to do. How I he turned out actually to be worse than what I had imagined him to be. But the team ended up winning somehow. The Bears ended up winning that game against the Titans somehow.
Yeah.
So I think Caleb Williams was actually the first rookie quarterback to win his first game, or first, maybe he's the first number one overall draft pick to win his first game as starter since I believe
Yeah.
David Carr won his first start like in 2002 or something like that. And
Yeah.
so it'd been a long time since the number one overall draft pick had won his first game. So
Well,
um,
typically they're going to the worst team in the
worst teams
league.
there are, yeah.
But this time the Bears weren't the worst team in the league. They ended up with the
No,
first pick because of a trade that happened
yeah.
earlier.
And the Panthers might be the worst team
So
again in the league, it seems like, from
yeah,
judging from
they
week
came
one
out and looked
results.
like maybe they're even worse than they were last year on their initial team. But
I think,
do you
yeah.
think the Bears would have done better in their game had they not they stuck with Fields instead of drafting Caleb Williams?
Well, Fields won his start, although against Atlanta, although they didn't score a single touchdown, it was six field goals for
Right.
for the Steelers. But
It
I
was
think
more than
maybe,
enough to win the game. They still won
yeah, I
by
think maybe they would have done
8.
better, because because yeah, I think Fields had a better game than because he ran the ball pretty effectively. I don't think he didn't throw any interceptions. He didn't have any. Let me look at the stats that Fields had 156 yards passing. Um,
which is like I think 60 plus
yeah,
yards more than Williams has.
he was 17 of 23 for 156 yards. He ran for 57 more yards. So he had, a decent day on the ground plus yeah, not very many yards passing, but he had one more yard passing than Kirk Cousins had, who only had 155 yards passing. So, you think of Cousins as being the big uh putting up big numbers usually, especially in a non-prime time home game in a dome. Uh
Right,
you would think but he's coming off an injury.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, the Bears Titans game was pretty ugly. Um, yeah, Caleb Williams, he didn't throw any interceptions, but he only threw 93 yards passing. He had 15 yards rushing, so he had 108 total yards of offense. Uh, Will Levis had a better game in a lot of ways than Williams, although he did throw some bad interceptions.
Couple picks though.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I
But
was
Williams
thinking,
took those two long sacks too, 29 yards lost on sacks. So
yeah,
the numbers are actually worse than what you had mentioned though. So
yeah, it was he was he was worse. I don't I don't think either of us thought Bo Nix was going to be great.
he
And
struggled pretty heavily in Denver's debut also in the QB.
yeah, yeah, he threw for
26 of
138 yards.
42. Yeah. 42 attempts to only get 138 yards, Mike.
That's pretty low. 3.3 yards per attempt is not so good.
Yes.
He did run for a touchdown,
Yes.
but I think that was one high point. But and then the other rookie quarterback um was uh was
Like
Daniels,
Washington,
was
right?
Jaden Daniels for the
Chambers.
Commanders, and he actually had the best game of everyone. He threw for 184 yards, ran for 88 more yards, and two touchdowns. So he had a solid debut. It seems like, although the Commanders were never really in the game, the Buccaneers kind of ran away with it. But so, do you think that this is a So he was the second pick, just like Stroud was the second pick last year. Is the second pick going to have a better season than the number one overall pick this year, judging by the first game at least? It seems like it.
Seems overwhelmingly in that it is a trend now, is what it seems like.
Yeah. Well, we had thought that maybe Daniels was going to have a season that was as like we thought he was maybe underhyped in the way that Williams might have been overhyped because Williams, um, I think Daniels is maybe he's more of the he's I think they thought Williams was going to be kind of the second Patrick Mahomes 2.0, and Daniels is more like Lamar Jackson 2.0 maybe, and he put up numbers similar to what Lamar kind of puts up on a regular basis. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, this was an interesting week just to see what would happen. But were there any surprises that you saw in the first week's games?
Maybe one little surprise anyway was just how bad Deshaun Watson looked too. Did you watch any of that Dallas Cleveland game?
I did watch some of it. Yeah, well, it was towards the end of it when I ended up
Yeah,
tuning in. But yeah, Dallas. Well, this is one of the games that we had thought Dallas was going to win. Even though Dallas was an underdog on the road in Cleveland for some reason. I think
yeah,
because Cleveland was a playoff team last year, and Dallas's off season was a little bit shaky. But now Dak Prescott signed the big contract, CeeDee Lamb signed the big contract, so it seems like things are getting a little better maybe in Dallas. And Dallas was a better team last year than the Browns were really. They won 12 games. They lost their playoff. Oh, they lost a playoff game, but so did the Browns. So and I think predicting the Browns to be good year after year is maybe a fool's errand. So
And this time their defense didn't look that good either, which was kind of their focal point
Hmm.
last year at least, was that even if their offense didn't perform the lofty goals that everyone had for Deshaun Watson, that at least their defense could hold him in games. And yeah, Dallas ended up scoring 33 against them, and they were, they didn't get to play together very much, right? Because Prescott didn't have CeeDee Lamb until
Hmm.
after the preseason was finished. So that's another one of those, situations where they haven't had a chance to like test the rust. Where like Aaron Rodgers didn't play in the preseason and then looked fairly rusty for the Jets, but it didn't look that way for Dallas though. I don't think so. 'Cause, yeah, CeeDee Lamb seemed like he had pretty decent numbers. He had 5 catches, 61 yards, and rushed 3 times for 25 yards on top of that. So that's pretty solid for missing the preseason.
Yeah, yeah. Should we talk about our bets then, since we were talking about the Brown? So we each made three bets on week one, and we each ended up finishing 1-2 on the week. We ended up winning uh one game and losing the other two in terms of our bets. So maybe start out. I was one who predicted that the Cowboys would cover their 2.5 point road spread, and also I predicted them to win outright. And they won outright fairly easily. And yeah, I was surprised that was I don't, because usually you would think that everybody would be betting on the Cowboys, and that the line would be moving, to a more favorable Cleveland line, because I don't think Cleveland's that popular with the bettors. But it was a
Yeah,
strange thing where like a heavily bet probably team that is in a spot that looks very favorable to them, was you were able to make that bet. And it's almost one of those things where you think, what am I missing here? Where
yeah,
I guess the game was at Cleveland. Cleveland's a playoff team, but I think, like you said, you know, Watson wasn't very reliable last year for them. He had a winning record as a quarterback, but he didn't have a, great stat line. And defense, if you rely on your defense too much, it seems like defense is one of those things that is a little bit more variable from year to year. Like, even if you have a good defense, one year you're going to be really good, and then maybe the next year you're just going to be kind of average when it comes to turnovers. You might allow more points, things like that. So even though Cleveland
yeah,
has a good defense, but I think a good offense still can overwhelm a good defense, and Cleveland doesn't have the offense with Nick Chubb being gone, and with a shell of the former Deshaun Watson as quarterback.
yeah. So how much do you think Cleveland regrets that move now? Do you think they would take Baker Mayfield back in a heartbeat, or do you think they'd still stick with Deshaun Watson, thinking that there's still a higher ceiling?
Maybe they take Baker back by this point, because he's tearing it up down there in Tampa. He had a solid season last season, and he had a good start to this season when they dismantled Washington 37-20 in their opening game. So Mayfield, I think he threw for more than almost 4 touchdowns, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns. So big debut for him. Yeah, I think the Buccaneers maybe show that they aren't. I think everybody thought the Falcons were going to win the division with Kirk Cousins' addition in the South, but it seems like the two teams that maybe we thought last year were going to battle it out for the division, the Saints and the Buccaneers, both have a little bit of life in them. So uh, the Saints, especially, that was surprising to me that they beat that. Maybe it just shows there. I guess there were two teams that were maybe so bad that maybe mediocre teams really can beat them up. Maybe we'll talk about the Giants maybe in a second, since I bet on them as well. But they looked terrible, and so did the Panthers. And it's hard to say whether those teams are just really, really bad, or the teams that beat them are actually much better maybe than we thought they could be. What was your first bet? What was your winning Why don't we go to your winning bet, then we can do our losing bets.
My picks in week one were all unders. I thought the offenses would be behind the defenses. That turned out to be not very good on my part, apparently. Because I was also wanting to. My first pick that I had that was the correct pick was on the Pittsburgh Atlanta game. That was one of the, I wasn't sure who would win the game, but I was pretty sure they wouldn't be able to score a lot of points, and that ended up being pretty accurate. But that was the only time I was right this
Yeah.
week on the locks, at least anyway. As a Pittsburgh ended up winning 18-10. On our big board, I did pick against Pittsburgh again, like I did like all of last year, and I keep losing these picks, Mike. I should just to give up and always back Pittsburgh no matter what.
Yeah,
Every
they
every
cover. They
sign
seem to
pointing to them
they
being
seem to
bad.
cover. They seem to keep things low scoring, and somehow they stay in it. Well, then if they had a 10-7 record somehow last year. It
Yeah.
seems like they're off to that start this year. They're going to have a winning record again, maybe because we thought maybe this was the year Pittsburgh is not going to have a winning record because they have quarterback issues, they have offensive issues. The defense can't keep them in every game still, and the defense could have been even better that game. I think T.J. Watt had two strip sacks that were taken away by penalty. In
Yeah.
addition to his other, I think he had maybe had 2.5 sacks additionally, something like that. So he had a really great game. It could have been even more one-sided, I think. Yeah, Pittsburgh. Yeah, I don't know. People thought Cleveland was going to be good, but maybe Cleveland's not so good anymore. It turns out maybe Cincinnati's not going to be very good either, depending on how at least their first game, they look pretty awful. So maybe Pittsburgh's the only 1-0 team in that AFC North division right now. They're in first place all by themselves. So
Yeah. And with their backup quarterback, since Russell
yeah,
Wilson wasn't able to go week one, so they went straight to Fields and it worked out okay. So
yeah, um, yeah. What didn't work out okay for me was betting on the Giants to cover the spread at home. I thought the Vikings weren't going to be that great with Sam Darnold as quarterback. They were favored on the road by 1.5, but I thought the Giants would be able to score and maybe hold the Vikings down somewhat, but they didn't do that. And the Vikings won easily 28-6 and a very lopsided, very easy win for Minnesota. And the Giants were just never in it. So maybe this is just the beginning of the end for the Brian Dable era and the Daniel Jones era in New York.
well, and what probably made it more insulting too was that Saquon Barkley, who they let go by
Mm.
not, actually giving him the contract that he wanted, and he ended up going to Philly, and he ended up rushing for over 100 yards and two touchdowns, and for Philadelphia against the
He caught a
Packers. So
touchdown too, so he had 3 touchdowns that game.
yeah, and the caught a touchdown. Yeah, so that's even more insulting, then, isn't it, for
Yeah,
Washington?
yeah, yeah. The Giants looked bad in a lot of ways. They were maybe the least impressive team, other than maybe it's the Panthers, or we could say the Bengals. Where those are probably the three least impressive teams over the
Yeah,
weekend.
but you
And
really expected the Giants defense to be solid, and you definitely wouldn't think that Sam Darnold was going to be able to at least move the ball and get Minnesota downfield. So because Darnold was terrible for the Jets, so that seems surprising that he'd be able to shift teams and do well that quickly against the former New York City
yeah, he came back to New York
opposing
and
team, right? So
was had a solid game. Maybe this Drew Lock is the backup in New York. Is he going to be the starter now? You think? Is he going to get a chance to come in? Yeah, because Daniel Jones, he
yeah, only around 50% completion percentage for the game, 22 of 42,
yeah, 186 yards,
186, only four and a
two
half, less than four and a
interceptions.
half yards in it.
Yeah, not very many yards in the ground either for him. So
Yeah.
he just looked Yeah, rushing in general was really bad for the Giants, and they were behind, so they had to throw the ball a lot. So that's not a recipe to win. So it was, yeah, this might be an ugly, really ugly season in New York.
Yeah, that's not looking so good.
How about your second bet that you're losing bet, Douglaston?
My second pick was the under on the Houston Indy game, 49.5. That ended up being a 29-27 Houston victory. So it's 56 points. So full touchdown over the cap.
Yeah, that was a high scoring game.
Yeah, so I thought that would be a much lower scoring. I thought both defenses were pretty decent, and it's like mostly offenses showed up in that game. Now,
Yeah,
I know you've kind of been picking against Houston, having a repeat of last year. Are you rethinking that now, or was that enough for you to think that Houston actually is pretty good this season, or are
it's hard to
you
say because I
still
don't know
going to
how
hold out
good.
until later to make that decision?
Yeah, I don't know how good Indianapolis is.
Yeah,
Houston did not cover the spread. I actually picked they were favored by 2.5, so I picked Indianapolis and they got it by a half point. I actually picked Indianapolis to win outright though, so I lost the money
uh,
later. But I
yes,
I won it on the spread at least, and I also had picked the so I thought that it was going to be a closer game maybe than what, and that Indianapolis had a chance to win, and they did. But yeah, I think Houston's going to be fine, but I don't know how good they really are. This is I think it's I still think of them a little bit like the Giants last year when the Giants came off of a kind of a very surprise playoff season where
yeah,
they actually won a playoff game against Minnesota, and Daniel Jones looked really good with Brian Dable at the helm. But then the next year they just kind of tanked, and I don't know if
yeah.
I don't think Cleveland's as bad as is as phony as that Giants team that made the playoffs, but I still want a little bit more evidence that they can actually hang with good teams, and they won't see that for I don't know what Houston's schedule is, but it I don't it's hard to say. Indianapolis might be okay, but as you mentioned before, um, um, Anthony Richardson, the quarterback, he gets injured more than he fails to complete games as often as he completes games. So it's
But he
yeah,
completed this one. So
he did.
I believe that's just the second game that he's finished that he started.
Yeah,
But yeah, decent numbers in the game though. Completion percentage wasn't great, 9 of 19, but 212 yards, two touchdowns, one interception. Had another 56 yards on the ground on only six carries and a touchdown.
yeah.
Those
It
are those
looks
are
like
pretty solid numbers.
yeah. I think the Texans have a decent early schedule. So they play the Bears next week at home.
Yeah,
So it'll be Stroud against um Caleb Williams
next week two, yes.
too. Then they're at the Vikings, home against the Jaguars, Bills, Patriots, at Packers. But then toward a little later, they have a schedule which is the Lions, Cowboys, uh, Titans, Jaguars, Dolphins, Chiefs, Ravens in a row. So like their second half of the schedule, I think is going to be tougher for them. So they'll need to rack up some wins early, I think, to
Yeah.
be a playoff contender. But the I think the
And it
three
could be,
weeks
5-1, 5-2, somewhere in that area after the first,
seven,
near the first
yeah,
half of the season. So
yeah, I think they need to be at least that high to maybe 6-2 in the first eight, and then
uh,
but that could easily happen. But my one team I mentioned the Lions. That was one team I thought would be okay, but was overrated coming in. this season. I still think they're a little overrated, but and I thought the Rams had a very good chance at covering that spread and actually beating them outright in Detroit, and they almost did. They probably should have won. I think they left a lot of points on the board in the first half, and they ended up going to overtime. And I think the Lions were favored by 3.5, and I picked the Rams to cover. So they tied the game in regulation. Then of course the Lions got the ball in overtime and scored a touchdown on the first possession. So that foiled my potential win there. And it was because it was an overtime close game, but the way it ended in the score, it turned out to be a cover for the Lions when really they weren't. I don't think they were the better team. And I think Stafford had a really huge night. Cooper Kupp looks like he's back. Although Puka Nacua went down with an injury, so maybe I think I don't. I still like the Rams as a playoff team this year, and I still think that they're better than the Lions, but it didn't come out of the scoreboard. Um, and this, yeah, it was one of those games where, yeah, I think the Lions playing at home had that advantage and ended up just kind of squeaking by. I'm not sure they can do that every game. But still, I think the Lions are a good team, but I don't think they're the Super Bowl team that a lot of people are
Yeah.
picking them to be.
Well, and that's one of those rivalry games too, with the quarterbacks that swapped teams, and
Yeah,
both had sort of had pretty good success actually after the trade. So I mean, it seems like both teams got what they wanted out of the deal.
yeah.
Rams won a title, and Detroit's finally looking like they're improving. So, that's kind of like what that was one of the bigger games of the week, at least for storylines. So,
Hmm.
and it delivered a decent game, right? It was
Yeah, it
a
was a fun
close
game to
game
watch. Yeah.
down to the wire, and yeah, it took Detroit were kicking a field goal right at the end of regulation to tie it, right? And then yeah,
Hmm.
winning it in overtime. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a pretty good game though.
Tough luck defeat for me there, but
Yeah.
that's those are the breaks though. And when it comes to this razor thin margins, and how about your third pick, Dr. Scaff? It
It
was
was
also a
a
razor thin margin.
thinnest of margins, exactly. Yeah, it's supposed to be a Chiefs Ravens game. At the line was set at 46 and a half. Could have been well over the 47 that it ended up, but yeah, 27-20 was the Chiefs' final score. Uh, Half point over, and I had the under, so I did not win that one either. Game was pretty exciting, though. It was as Chiefs fans, that's exactly what we wanted out of the game was a win. But do you feel confident in the Chiefs after their Week 1 performance?
Well, I do and I don't. I think it's one of those things where the Chiefs should have won that game by more. It shouldn't have come down. They won the game by basically 1 inch when Isaiah Likely caught that touchdown pass, but his toe was barely out of bounds,
Yeah.
and so that would have tied the game or maybe even won the game for Baltimore because they were going to go for two with
Yeah, they
zero
were they
seconds
were
left on the clock.
signaling that they were going to go for two.
Yeah.
Harbaugh
Um,
was.
but
So
the Chiefs had several chances to go up by double digits. They could have gone up by 13 a few times or gone up by more than what they ended up going. They squandered a lot of opportunities, I thought, and they let the Ravens hang around, and
yeah,
it almost really burned them at the end because they couldn't stop Lamar Jackson at the end. He got a couple of big touchdown plays. He got a big touchdown to Likely. He started scrambling pretty well towards the end of the game. So it was one of those things where they need to make sure that they have victory in hand before they act like they have victory in hand. It seems like
yeah,
the way they wind things down a little bit early. It seems like a lot of the times, but because they don't want to show anything beyond what they think they need to show the other team. But sometimes, yeah, I think it makes the margins a little thinner than they need to be, and sometimes it bites them. And this time, it really got close to doing that when they should have um, Yeah, they should have been up by at least 10 when they were only up by 7. So yeah,
Uh,
but I'm still the Ravens still though are a very good team. They're one of the best teams in the league. So
that's why this game shouldn't have been played in week one, though. This should have been like a week, at least 12 or something, right? Where it's like later in the year where they're closer to, playoff form as opposed to
mhm.
the very first game of the year for the NFL season. I don't know why they, want to, put a marquee type game that early in the season because it's like, I mean, there are playoff implications for it.
Yeah.
So, Baltimore could have, made or lost their tiebreaker on playoff tiebreaker for who could have home field advantage on a 2-point conversion in week one of the season seems just crazy that scenario could even play out. So I
Yeah.
don't know why they want to schedule those games like that because there's like a lot more implications on that game than there should be for a week one matchup.
And you think because it's the first game, people are going to tune in anyway. It's not like
Yeah.
it did bring in the best ratings of any opening game for the last 10 years at least, I think. So it was solid in that regard, but it could have been,
No.
I think, yeah, the Chiefs could have played some other team that was not as highly touted as the Ravens, and still the NFL would have done quite well. But for the Chiefs though, it's good to get that game out of the way and to have won. So and
Yeah.
to escape by the skin of their
Having
teeth.
won, it was fine, right?
Yeah.
Um, was we got to see debut then from Xavier Worthy. Were you impressed with his personal performance then in the game?
I was. He looked well. He didn't get the ball very much, but when he got the ball, it seemed like he scored a touchdown each time. He caught 2 passes. One of them was a big touchdown pass where he was just wide open, and then the run, the first time he touched the ball was pretty impressive. The way he just ran by everybody.
Weave
So
through, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, just carved it up basically. Yeah,
this
that was great.
was and yeah, the Chiefs' offense looked a little bit more explosive than it did last year, and this was without Hollywood Brown playing.
Yeah,
So I think Mahomes had a bad interception that where the I think that was where the Chiefs really could have put the Ravens away at the end of the half, end of the first half, but the way it let the Ravens back in and they got a field goal um, instead of the Chiefs scoring a field goal or a touchdown. So that was just like at least a 6 point swing there probably. And yeah, there were other times where the Chiefs, I think, squandered opportunities. They had a couple of easy touchdown passes that were dropped in the flat by running backs. One was
yeah,
Pacheco missed, and one I think Pirine missed.
yes, yeah,
And there was a drop pass in the end zone from Juju. That was a tougher catch though. Uh, but there were a lot of very, very close calls that could have gone the other way with those passes that were it seems like touchdowns just the way they looked, but they were drops. So it made the game made the game closer than I think it had the right to be. But the Chiefs still won, and if you they covered if you bet the spread. So it was
yes, right. Which you did on the big board.
on the big board. Yeah.
Before
Uh,
we move on, though, we should probably mention very quickly the Green Bay Philly game once again, just because one of the scenarios that you had talked about before the season started is about to play out when
mhm.
Jordan Love was injured at the end of the game. Do you think Green Bay is now already done because of their week one loss to Philly, and now having to go to a backup for up to 3 to 4 weeks at least, from what it sounds like?
Yeah, I think Malik Willis is not the guy you want as your backup, especially because he's new and he didn't have a very good time when he was Tennessee's quarterback. He has a hard time passing. It seems like he can run the ball pretty well, but if if you can, if you force him to, that's a problem. And it seems like Jordan, that's the Green Bay offense is good at running the ball, but they also have really good receivers that open the running game up for people, and so I think, yeah, I think that we had mentioned before the season started that Green Bay maybe had the worst quarterback room behind the starter of anybody. So then then probably Green Bay thought the so as well. Then they brought in Malik Willis, who is not necessarily an improvement. Yeah, Tennessee runs basically the same offense as Green Bay because Matt LaFleur was in Tennessee before, and I think even with Mike Vrabel gone, I think they still run basically the same kind of offense that they ran before. And so if you think that, well, why don't they bring in Ryan Tannehill as their backup?
Yeah.
Because he's had more success in Tennessee than Malik Willis has. He'll cost a little bit more money, but I think he would be a better stopgap than Willis for 3 or 4 weeks. And so, but like you said, I don't know if that means Green Bay is out of it necessarily. I don't think Chicago's as strong as we thought they might be in the North. I think it might mean that Detroit could run away with the division unless somehow Minnesota is the strong team that we didn't think they would be. So I think because they're in the NFC, I think the Packers still have a chance, but they'd have to I think they have to at least tread water, and so they can't probably be if Love misses, let's say 4 games, I think they'll have to be at least, I don't if if they're 2-3 after 5 games, I think that's okay. 1-4 after 5 games though, that could be too much to make up.
Yeah.
So you would have to say, I think you have to say that they need to go if Love's going to miss 4 weeks, which it seems like maybe he's going to miss up to 4 weeks. I think they will need to be 2-2 in those games.
Well, they get a
Because
couple of those teams that you just mentioned in the next 4 weeks are Colts in Green Bay, at Tennessee, Vikings in Green Bay, at Rams for the next 4 games.
yeah,
So
yeah, those are
with
all.
Jordan Love last like towards the end of last season, they're probably 4-1 in that stretch, and after the first game anyway. So
Yeah, you think the loss to the Eagles, if they had beaten the Eagles somehow, that would
yeah,
have been a they would be sitting much prettier. I think even just being 1-0, having this stretch because they're playing 4 kind of mid-level teams. It seems like maybe the Rams are the best of those uh, teams, I think, by a good shot. But the Colts are kind of probably a 9-8, 8-9 team. I think the Panthers are probably. I mean, the Titans are probably a 9-8, 8-9 team, and the Vikings maybe are a 9-8, 8-9 team as well. So they're playing these kind of mid-level teams, and they'll have to. I think the Packers. We thought, at least I thought going in, maybe the Packers are like a 11 or 12 win team on the year, but now I think they'll be lucky if they can get to 10 wins, and that might be the number you need to get into the
you
playoffs.
did have them at 10. That's what your over under for this season
Oh, it
was.
was at 10. Okay.
Their over under number was 9.5, which I had them at 9. So I feel good about my under pick right now. Right now, week one,
Uh-huh.
after week one. Yeah, so no.
Yeah, so well, now I feel like yeah, maybe yeah, I think they'll be fortunate to win 10 right now. I had thought maybe they would beat the Eagles and come out fairly strong, but they lost to the Eagles. Now Love is hurt, so it's gonna be tough, tough sledding. But fortunately for them, they're like we said, they're in the NFC, which is the I think still easily the weaker of the two conferences.
Any other games that we want to
We
chat about before we move on?
and we did what did you think of the 49ers victory over the Jets? Do you think that the 49ers were without McCaffrey, but they still handle the Jets fairly easily. Is Rodgers, is he done, or do you think the Jets are going to improve?
I think a lot of what we saw from Rodgers was probably just rust. And had he played in the preseason, maybe he wouldn't have been. Maybe they would have played a little better, I guess. But San Francisco is just a tough team anyway, and they seem like they come out trying to win right out of the gate. They're not, looking to play their fourth preseason game in week one like some teams
Hmm.
are, like the Jets, sort of, I guess, right? So they came out very professionally and did everything that they did last season. So they, ran the ball well, threw the ball well enough, and didn't make any ridiculous mistakes. So yeah, no, it was a pretty solid win for San Francisco. But the important thing for the Jets is that Rodgers actually did make it through
Yeah,
as much of the game as he wanted to play, I guess. Like I think they did pull him
for
a
Tyrod
lot of
Taylor, and
series
yeah,
because the game was out of reach. So, what did you think of Rodgers' debut?
I thought he looked okay sometimes, but he did not
Yeah,
have the mobility that he used to have, and maybe
yeah.
that's just because he's older, but also who knows if he's recovered fully from the Achilles injury, he might maybe he won't ever get that because he's more of a scrambler type, and he didn't really do much of that. He didn't look like he could do a lot of that. At least just watching. He didn't wasn't like limping around or anything, but he didn't seem to have like some of that explosiveness that he once did.
I just caught a mistake in the spreadsheet here. Weird. Okay. All right. I'll have to fix that. Some of the numbers aren't quite right.
Oh, okay.
On our big board. I had the point totals like flipped for the Arizona Buffalo game.
Hmm.
Yeah. Now I fixed that, but now I have to fix the rest of the. Oh well.
Well, well, you ended up winning a little bit of money in the big board. I ended up losing some money, but not as much as I did last year. So we're both improved on last year. Well, so you think you're up 130 if
Yeah, I'm going to be up
results
a little
hold?
bit higher, I think, because of the mistake. And you'll be down just a little bit more. Sorry, because I had it listed as Arizona winning, but I knew they didn't because I fixed it over here. Yeah. Oh well.
Did I picked Arizona to cover though.
Oh, that's it. That's what it was. No, so that was right. I just had the points were wrong.
Okay,
I had the points reversed, but they
I
did
see.
cover. That's right. That's
So
right. The numbers are the same. I just had
okay, so
and
I was down
and
about 500. You were up about 130. Um,
yes.
so you're in a commanding lead right now, but from week to week things change. So you're on the right path already though. I
Well, both of
was
us both of us were dramatically improved over week one last season. So it
mhm,
seems like we figured something. Maybe we're trending in the right direction, I guess, right? Year to year,
yeah.
even.
And like we mentioned off air, I had a free $200 bet to make on FanDuel that I used to bet on the Dallas Cowboys to cover the spread, and so I ended up winning 180 real dollars in on that victory. So I feel good about, even though I'm losing in our big board, I am up in real money,
In the real world, which is
in the
more
real world.
important
So
than the
yeah,
fake world.
yes.
Yes.
Speaking of the real world and being up, the Royals are back up. They've reversed their skid that they had last week. It seems like maybe they're getting used to Pasquantino being out. Some of the new guys are like Pham and Gurriel and are adjusting to life as Royals now. And the Royals have won, I think, four of their last five games. So
Five of
they
their
swept
last six now, maybe.
five of their last six. They swept the Twins.
Yeah.
They They won tonight against the Yankees. They didn't look very good last night against the Yankees, but they won tonight against the Yankees in a shutout with Seth Lugo pitching really well. Now they're up by 3 games over the Twins, and only down 3 games to the Guardians. Although the Guardians are playing the White Sox right now, so they have a really easy schedule for a little while. But the Royals, according to ESPN, now are 95.6% chance of making the playoffs, which is close to a lock.
It's getting there. And that series that they have coming up against the Tigers may be the deciding factor because the Tigers are the now first team out of the playoffs, as Boston has slipped back even further. So, yeah, the Royals are great shape, controlling their own destiny even, which is
Yeah.
not what we expected at all from this year. So this has been a very pleasant season as a whole.
Yeah, basically and to have a losing record on the season, the Royals would have to lose their last 16 games in a row. They're up by so they would finish 80 and 82 if they lost their last 16. But if they win just one more game, they'll be at 500 they'll be no worse than 500. So
Yeah,
coming into the year, this would have been more surprising than anything. I think the Royals are in playoff contention. They've won 80 games. They only won 56 games all of last year, and it seems like maybe they're even worse than that at points in time. So
yeah,
this is it's a great time to be a Royals fan.
yeah. And they have been, yeah, pretty fortunate that, yeah, Tommy Pham is building very well as the leadoff hitter. He's even hit a
Mhm.
couple home runs. He
Yeah,
won one game with a 3-run homer essentially. So yeah, he's made a huge impact on the team, especially when they've been, looking like it was gonna be pretty bleak once Pasquantino went out. So that's
yeah,
been a
and Witt
big
has cooled off a little
difference.
bit too, and still the Royals are doing all right.
And Sal is heating up though. I think he was 4 for 4 yesterday and a couple hits today too. So that's
Mhm.
a good sign that Sal isn't running out of steam as the season goes on, which is kind of what he's done in the past several years when he was catching a lot of extra games. But this year it seems
Mhm.
like they're more willing to let Fermin catch, and Sal's been playing some first base now that Pasquantino's out. So some of those things may actually end up helping him stay a little healthier as the years go on.
Yeah, yeah, it's
So
been
yeah,
quite a ride for the Royals. And now as we said, they're 3 games up on the second on the third wild card. So uh, they are 6.5. They're 6 games up on the Tigers, 6.5 on the Mariners, and 7 games up on the Red Sox. So it would take a pretty big collapse, it seems like right now, for the Royals to fall out of playoff position.
we were kind of afraid of a surge by one of those teams, right? Detroit
Yeah. Hmm.
or Boston or Seattle, but that hasn't come at all. So it's been, yeah, even seemingly easier route for the Royals because they don't have that pressure coming up from below.
Well, I guess the Royals now are up 2.5 over the Twins. The Twins won tonight. So,
Okay,
but still,
but this series sweep against Minnesota over the weekend was huge.
yes, yes, that was for as badly as they played against the Astros and uh, the Guardians last week. This was a important important victory. So those are important wins.
So what they've got another game against the Yankees tomorrow, which will be yesterday when this airs. And then they have a weekend series against
The Pirates.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try to go to one of those games in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So are you in Pittsburgh regularly now, or is it
Yeah, when
weekends or
I go up to see MJ.
regular? Yeah.
I'm there most weekends.
Yeah.
And so I'll be in Pittsburgh this weekend. So I'll probably go to this game on Saturday.
Nice.
Um, and that's the plan anyway, at least right now. So
So they already have. Looks like you would be seeing Waka pitching against Mitch Keller.
in relation to Brad Keller,
Not Brad Keller, but Mitch Keller.
Mitch Keller.
What is the projected matchup for Saturday's game? I'm not familiar with Mitch Keller,
I'm not
so
either looking him up. He looks
he's,
like a
he's
little kid. He's 28 years old. He's from Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
from Cedar Rapids. Yeah,
Well, he
yeah.
played
This
for the
is a
Altoona Curve. I probably saw him. Maybe. He's been with the Pirates for a few years. So, uh,
yeah,
but a minor league game. I've been to a few minor league games in Altoona when
yeah.
I was there, and watched the Curve. That team. It's named the Altoona Curve because there's a big railroad curve there, and Altoona was a big railroad hub in central Pennsylvania. Um, they have a curve mascot, and they also have Al Tuna, who is a fish mascot for the Altoona Curve. So
Seems like you would just have like a cartoon or something. I'd say that kind of tune, not the tuna. That's not how you spell Altoona. Is it like the
no, it's
fish?
not, but
So
it's Toon. But you can't. I don't think you can waste that opportunity of having a tuna named Al as your mascot. So
plays well for the kids.
yes,
Have you made it to any Pittsburgh games thus far?
not this year. No, this will be my first this season.
Yeah.
Um, Oh, the Altoona Curve plays at a it's one of the funniest named stadiums, I think. They play in People's Natural Gas Field, which I
Uh,
think why is this company called People's Natural Gas, which seems a little um flatulent.
that's pretty great.
People's Natural Gas Field. Yes.
Is this like a new technology that small business is working on in
I
the
suppose
Altoona
so.
area,
Yeah,
or is it
it's it's made out of people,
uh,
like Soylent Green.
so it's a soil and green scenario?
Yeah, but I think it's more. I think it's just more powered by beer farts. The bratwurst. Yeah,
Where
but
Soylent Green is
mhm,
people's
yeah,
natural gas is from people. That's
people.
totally
Yeah,
different.
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. The implications are less gross, but also still gross.
Yes.
It's
People's Natural Gas Field. Anyway, I will go to the game at PNC Park, named after a bank uh, in Pittsburgh, but not yeah. I haven't gone to a People's Natural Gas Field game this year. I think I went to a game last year, the year before. I've been to a few games in Altoona, but they're fun. They're fun to go to. It's a nice little stadium. Fun, yeah, fun little minor league park. Get to see the stars of the future today.
or the rehabbing current stars that are
Yes, yeah. Washed
working their way back.
or washed up major leaguers. Yeah, you'll see those sometimes too.
That too. Yeah.
Yeah.
The stars of yesteryear.
Yeah, I guess Altoona the Curve are a double A team. Uh they're a double A team. So you don't see quite as many washed up because those are you guys are usually in triple A. You
Yeah.
have to be really washed up to wash down to double A from the majors.
Yeah. You'd be more likely to see like rehab starts or something like that from
Hmm.
players working their way back from injuries. Might make a double A appearance.
Yeah.
But that's about it. Very washed up stars. Or that.
Yes.
So
Yeah. How about you want to move on to this week's NFL action and
sure,
our bets for the week before we wrap things up here on the Morning Trade Power Hour? We have
let's do it.
we have some big games coming up. The Chiefs play the Bengals, and on Sunday afternoon, in the late slot, 3:30 Central Time, 4:30 Eastern. What do you think of? Maybe we'll talk a little about the Chiefs Bengals game. Do you think the Bengals looked really bad in their opener against the Patriots, losing 16-10, and Burrow had a bad outing? T. Higgins was injured. Jamar Chase has barely had any communication with the team and was holding out during the offseason, but he ended up playing. Do you think the Bengals are they just off to a slow start, or is this indicative that maybe they don't have a very good team this year? They tend to start slow in a lot of years.
From the based on the numbers from the first from Burrow, at least anyway, it looks he's got to be dealing with some kind of injury, you would think, right? I mean, like he
His
doesn't.
well, he injured his wrist last year. Is that still bothering him? Maybe
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that he's either dealing with that same injury or he's aggravated something. But I mean, you can go downfield and all. He like, did he what? Just cleared 100 yards in passing. Was that about it for week one?
yeah, it was not very many. He had
164,
164. Yeah, he had more yards passing than
29.
Drake May did, but he 21 completions. Yeah, 164 passing. Yeah, no touchdowns. Yeah, just like an anemic offense that
Yeah,
he
and
led.
even I mean Chase did have 6 catches, but it was only 62 yards, which seems very low
For
for a
him, yeah.
wide receiver of his caliber and speed then too. So like he was completing passes to him, but they didn't go for much distance. He did complete all of the passes to Chase, so 6 of 6.
Mhm.
So
He had a
I
long
mean
of
that's
28
pretty
yards
good
too.
for not having
So
played any in the preseason. But
yeah, I think they're missing Tyler Boyd from last year, the number 3 receiver who went to Tennessee, and they were missing T. Higgins, the number 2, and so they don't have a lot of depth, I think, behind Chase, at least not right now, without um yeah, without Higgins there. So, and Higgins is kind of surly as well about his contract situation. He was franchise tagged. He wants a long-term deal. So nobody and Cincinnati is traditionally pretty tight-fisted when it comes to paying their players. So
hmm
who knows how much longer the ride in Cincinnati is going to last if they're going to just dump their good players and try to be thrifty like they used to be, or they didn't pay Burrow a lot of money, but he's the quarterback, and
yeah. And Chase came back without a new deal. Isn't that right?
yeah,
So but Higgins is because he actually has an injury though, doesn't he? Right now, is that why he
yeah, I
missed?
think it's
That's
a
why he missed week
hamstring.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. So,
Have they said what his expectation is for week two? Or are they?
I don't know if he's going to play or not. You almost though think that the Bengals are going to be desperate to win this game because you think that um, because they didn't nobody expected them to lose to the Patriots, so they're probably going to be extra hungry for this win. So maybe they'll play the Chiefs even harder than they would normally. So maybe it's a wounded bear that the Chiefs are I guess a wounded tiger that the Chiefs are dealing with, which isn't um, good.
Yeah.
But it seems like at least according to Adam Schefter, he says Higgins has a hamstring injury. We'll see how the week plays out, but I'll be surprised if he plays on Sunday against the Chiefs.
Yeah, officially listed as questionable now on ESPN's page. But yeah, it looked like New England was able to run pretty consistently against them. They ended up with 170 rushing yards. You think the Chiefs are going to approach it the same way and try to run on Cincinnati, or do you think they don't care? They're just going
No,
to run the
I
offense
don't
they
think
do.
they ever let the other team's defense dictate what they want to do. I think they're going to try. They're just going to do they're going to do the normal thing, and maybe they will run it somewhat with Pacheco, but I think they're just going to throw it like they usually do, and that's probably going to work fine. The question will be how well the Chiefs defense holds up against the possibly um, lackluster offense of the Bengals. Surprisingly lackluster. But they
Yeah.
also could break out and have a big game. So it's hard. I am a little bit nervous about this game. The Chiefs are favored by 5.5, but I actually made my first bet of the week is on this game, but it's not on the Chiefs or the Bengals. It's on the over under. I am still thinking the Bengals aren't going to score a lot of points, and the over under was I believe 48.5. So I'm going to go under on Chiefs Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, if the Bengals play anything like they did in week one, then it doesn't. We would expect that they're not going to put up a lot of points this week either. Then, so that would seemingly be a wise pick. But these games have been shootouts in the past,
Yes.
but the Chiefs haven't seemed like they've wanted to get into shootouts recently, and their defense has been much stronger this last couple of seasons than it has at
Yeah.
several years before that when those games were
Mhm.
higher scoring anyway. So yeah.
How about your first bet, Dr. Scav?
My first bet. So last week I went all unders. This week I'm going away from that. I didn't like how that went, so I'm going more on home favorites this week because that's what did well in week one. So I'm gonna see if that trend continues and see if we can pick on some of that. My first pick this week is going to be Houston favored by 6.5 against Chicago. Yeah, Chicago's offense didn't look good in week one. And their defensive scores were what kept them in the game. I'd be surprised if they're able to do that again and stay in that game. Houston's probably going to be running it up a bit, would be my expectation. So Houston minus 6.5 at home against the
Yeah,
Bengals.
I could see that happening. It seems like Chicago Fields, I mean not Fields, Williams doesn't have the uh grasp of the offense in the way that maybe we thought going in. The Bears were very lucky to win their game against the Titans. They took defensive and special teams touchdowns to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think Williams only had 90 something yards passing. So and the Texans look pretty good on offense in Indianapolis. So yeah, I could see that being a game that the Texans win pretty easily.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Titans, I'm also going to be betting on the Titans this week. I had considered betting on Indiana on the Titans against Chicago in the first week. I thought the Titans had a very good chance of winning, which they did, but they ended up blowing that game against Chicago in Chicago. But the Jets are playing at Tennessee, and they're favored by 3.5 points on the road against Tennessee. Neither of those teams looked very impressive in week one. I think the Jets might beat the Titans, but 3.5 points is, I think, for a team that's not so great to get 3.5 points on the road against another team that maybe is not so great is a little bit, um, it's a little bit too many, a few too many points. I think. I don't know if Rodgers really is back and has it. It seems like the Jets, they didn't look very impressive against the 49ers. Their offense looked pretty dismal at times. So I think Tennessee maybe will turn it around and uh, has a strong defense, and I think it's probably going to be a fairly low scoring game. But so I think maybe Tennessee has a chance of keeping it close at least. So and maybe winning outright at home. So I like Tennessee at home plus 3.5.
And that could be one of those games that just ends something like 3-0, and that would be fine. You wouldn't care who won the game if it was a 3-0 game. So it would be enough to cover either way.
Yeah, I wouldn't care
Mm.
as long as it didn't finish 6-2
That's right.
in favor of the Jets. I'd be happy if it was a really low scoring game with four
Yes.
safeties.
Right. All safeties. You should actually make that bet that will be a
All
multi-safety
safeties.
game.
Yeah, I wonder what the odds of that would be. Yeah.
High, I'm pretty sure, very high.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's see. My second pick is, I think, fairly risky actually, but I'm still going to go with it. I've got Washington -2.5 at home against the New York Giants. We saw how flat the Giants' offense was, and Washington actually seemed like they were playing pretty well in week one, so I think they can probably cover that spread. They only need to win by a field goal at home, so I'm gonna stick with that. Commanders -2.5. What do you think about that pick?
I like it. I think the Giants might just be really, really, really bad, and the Commanders at least showed some signs of life with Jaden Daniels. So yeah, I don't think that's a bad pick. Guess maybe the Giants aren't as bad as we thought, and maybe the um, Commanders will be really bad in week two. But I don't I yeah, I don't think that's a bad pick at all. I'd be surprised. Yeah, it looks like on ESPN now, Washington is favored by 3. So if you get it by 2.5, that's a good pick.
Yeah,
Looks like it's made the lines scooching your way.
maybe shifting towards that. Yeah, it's a good thing I locked it early, I guess.
Yes, very good.
How
Um,
about your third pick now, Mike?
my third pick is another. So I went all spread last week, and this week I'm doing 2 over-unders. I did an under in Cincinnati, Kansas City. I'm still a little bit um, bearish on Detroit, and I think they're playing Tampa Bay, another team that they played in the playoffs last year. So their first 2 games are their 2 playoff victories. They beat the Rams in the divisional, and I think or they beat the Rams in the wild card, I think, and then they beat the Buccaneers in the divisional. Maybe it was the other way around. I can't remember, um, but the Buccaneers are playing at Detroit. The Buccaneers had a very good first game against the Washington. Baker Mayfield had a big day. I think it's going to be high scoring, even though the line is pretty high, 50.5. But I think the scores are going to be even higher. I think it'll be a shootout, and so I think I like over 50.5. I like it maybe 31, 27 type of game in Detroit. So that would be over. That would be 58. So something like that.
Yeah. So if you and we don't do these and these types of picks anyway, but that sounds like you go even like an alternate spread and go ahead and or an alternate point total and go even over higher.
Yeah, I don't know if I do that, but yeah, I'm thinking that's could be the score though. Yeah, so maybe I would.
Yeah. You did have it correct though. It was Rams in the wild card round and Tampa in the divisional.
Okay,
That is that is what you said.
nice. I remember the way the NFC playoffs shook out last year, so that's a good feeling.
Good memory for yeah,
Yes.
something you don't really care that much about is the NFC. So yeah, just in
Yeah,
general.
yeah. Well, what about your third pick
My
next year?
third pick is one of the bigger spreads that I don't tend to usually pick games with larger spreads, but this one is another one that against a team that didn't play very well in week one was the Las Vegas Raiders. Uh, Baltimore is playing them coming off a loss to Kansas City. I kind of expect to see them playing very well this week,
Mhm.
would be my expectation of a revenge type of scenario. So Baltimore is favored by 9.5 points at home with visiting Raiders. I expect to see Baltimore, yeah, winning by multiple scores, maybe 3 or 4 touchdowns, probably.
Yeah, Baltimore's not afraid to run it up when they
Yeah,
beat a team. They are not they're not shy about scoring a lot of points if they can. I think that could be the case too. But you never know. Gardner Minshew maybe will have a little bit of magic up his sleeve. But yeah, the Raiders didn't look terribly good against the Chargers, but and Baltimore's a much better team than the Chargers. So I could see that game getting out of hand too. You never know in the NFL though. It's a strange league. Are there any other games you're looking forward to next week besides the ones we made bets on and the ones we've talked about already?
There are some. I mean, probably one of the more interesting games. It's just unfortunate it's another Thursday game. Is the Buffalo Miami game? Is
Yeah, that's a great
it's
game.
traditionally been, yeah, crazy, but yeah, it's kind of too bad it's on a Thursday again. Then was that one that you were looking at, or
Yeah, I think that's a great game. Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, it's Thursday, so there's no time to prepare for really for either of the teams, and also it seems like maybe Josh Allen got a little dinged up in the first game against the Cardinals. He seems like he hurt his left hand, his non-throwing hand a little bit, and
Hmm.
so we'll see how that affects him. It's Buffalo on the road in Miami. Um, I'm sure Miami would have rather had that game later in the season than early, and maybe have that as a day game rather than a night game. But it's it'll be interesting. It'll be a fun game to watch. Miami had the chance to win the division last year, and then they blew their home game against the Bills. So maybe they're out for revenge. I don't. Yeah, it's Thursday nights are even more unpredictable, I think, than Sunday games are. So they're favored by 1.5 at home. I don't know who I would take there.
yeah,
Um,
some of these games are going to be tricky to pick. I think so. There are
maybe
some kind of stinker type matchups this week.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think Buffalo is quite as good as they were last year, though. So I think it's going to require Josh Allen to do more, and I think he can do
yeah,
that against teams like the Cardinals, but maybe he won't be able to do that quite as well against a better team like Miami. So I'm leaning maybe Miami uh, at home uh, with the -1.5, but don't hold me to it.
what about another matchup of teams that with a quarterback moved from one team to the other team, now facing his old team, Pittsburgh at Denver. Now Russell Wilson, that won't be playing though. Is that game
Yeah, I don't know if
interesting
he's
to
going
you
to be
at
playing. I
all,
guess it's
or?
probably going to be Fields, isn't it? Going to be
I would
starting.
assume because he played well enough to win in the first game, but yeah,
They
so we
probably are
don't
going to rush Wilson back.
wouldn't think so. I
That'll
mean,
be an ugly game. I think it's a game. It's the kind of game that Pittsburgh likes. So it would be easy to see Pittsburgh up to winning 2 games in a row out
yeah,
of the gate on the road. So they'd be 2 in a row with 2 road games under their belts. So that's would be very I Pittsburgh I believe is they're favored by 3 over Denver. Pittsburgh's not a great team, but Denver's not a good team either. So, but Pittsburgh, like we said, finds a way to win. So maybe I would just bet on Pittsburgh and hope for the best. Their defense is strong again this year, and I
yeah.
think Denver's not going to have a great offense either. So I think it'll be low scoring. What's the over under? 36.5. That's low. What do you think?
And and it's probably going to be under though, right? And they only combined for 28 points in the first game, so that would be
Yeah.
well under.
Denver scored 20 points in their loss, and the Pittsburgh scored 18 in their win. So they scored 38 together, not against each other last week.
Yeah,
So I don't know if that holds or not, but
but we already know that Bo Nix doesn't have enough letters in his name
no, he doesn't. Yeah, we haven't mentioned
to
the
be
Bo
a
Nix
solid NFL quarterback.
is too
Isn't that right?
short. His short name, his name is at least 3 letters, four letters, I believe, too short. Or
That was what we decided at the end of last week's episode, I
at
believe.
least
It's
three
like
letters. Tom Brady is 8 letters, but he's still Thomas
right.
Brady. Drew Brees, I think, was the shortest, and he's 9 letters. So yeah, Bo
Yes.
Nix is his name's
Because
entirely
Drew
too
wasn't
short.
short for something though. That's what
Yeah,
we I just
Drew is
assumed it was short for Andrew, but it's not. Yeah, it's
no,
just
it's
Drew.
so that makes does that lower your opinion of Drew Brees?
A bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Same for Drew
assumed it was a fellow
Same for Drew
Andrew and just
Tranquil.
went by Drew, but yeah.
Yeah. At least it's spelled Drew rather than Drue like Drew Tranquil.
Right. Right. We
Um,
always liked Andrew Jones though, right? Was that your favorite spelling of Andrew?
oh no,
And
that was not.
UW?
It's That's a triple. That's a triple U at the end.
Essentially, yes.
Yes. U followed by a W. Are there any other words with you and you following a W?
UW. No, I don't. Not that I'm aware of.
Maybe some
Not that,
odd.
not that pop into my head immediately, at least anyway.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a word
Independence.
of a W U word with W and U next to each other.
Hmm.
That's not, like an English word. There's like Wuhan, China, or I guess there's that alternate spelling of what WUT, but that's not standard English.
Wu-Tang Clan.
Wu-Tang. Yeah. That's another sort of Chinese Asian kind of
Oh,
sound.
nice.
Like um yeah, is there a
Hmm. I like that you went to what? What? That's funny. I would not have guessed that that would be near the top of your mind, Mike.
Oh, I guess Wunderkind, the German, will have Wunderbar, things like that,
Yes.
or or
Yes.
or or Wussy, Bratwurst. So a lot of German stuff,
Uh-huh.
German
Slang.
words,
Slang in
German slang.
German.
Yeah, I don't think there's any regular English besides, yeah, like or Wuthering, I guess, like Wuthering Heights.
It
Um,
always sounds funny anyway. Like it doesn't roll off the tongue though, does it?
yeah, it's
Wuthering.
also an alteration of the word wither, so it's a
Right.
non-standard. So yeah, W and U don't really. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, if you have one, you usually only use one of them. You don't put them next to each other.
Right. No triple use.
No triple U's or quadruple U's.
Yes.
And you don't. Well, you do have a double U that's not a W in the word like vacuum. That's a UUM.
Yes.
But if it were
W. That is it a
VACWM, it
W?
wouldn't be pronounced vac. It would be vacuum or something. That's interesting.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, since we're debating letter combinations, maybe that's a sign that it's time to end this week's episode of the Morning Trek Power Hour. I think
It's been
I'm sure there'll be other great matchups in the National Football League this weekend that we can talk about next week, but maybe for now we'll leave it at that, and we'll be back next week with more hard hitting, side splitting NFL analysis. I don't know if it will be side split. We don't know if any of our discussions are side splitting. Maybe hair splitting. Maybe hair splitting analysis. That would
that
be a movie.
sounds
Yeah.
we do a lot of that.
Hard hitting hair splitting analysis. And yeah, that'll be back next week. And we'll also be another week closer to the playoffs in Major League Baseball. We'll see how the Royals do. Maybe hopefully they won't have another up down. They're due for another down week, but hopefully they at least have a steady week next week. And we'll find out how they're doing and how close they're getting to the playoffs. Hopefully they avoid the injury bug that's already bitten them a little bit. They don't get anybody else hurt and just try to stay healthy. And it seems like if they can kind of keep the ship somewhat steady, they're going to make the playoffs. And it's going to be like a 2014, 2015 all over again. We have the Royals playoff team.
Wow. We definitely didn't expect that for this year. We were hoping for
No,
it for maybe next year or the year after, but we're not
yeah,
expecting it this season. Yeah.
yeah. So we
Pleasantly
have,
surprised.
yeah, so we'll have the Chiefs and Royals both in the playoffs, we hope, this coming season. And we'll have the Chiefs game to talk about next week. Hopefully, will have routed the Bengals by that point, and we'll have all sorts of other NFL action to talk about. And we hope that this weekend your teams that you're betting on do well, the teams you're rooting for do well, as long as they're not playing the Chiefs or the Royals, since that's where those are our hometown teams here on the Warning Track Power Hour. Anything else before we sign off?
I think we got it covered.
All right. So, as always, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the One Trick Power Hour. Please like and or subscribe to our YouTube channel or our podcast. It's available on many different podcast delivery systems, and you should be able to find us. Just look up Warning Track Power Hour, and that should be us. Although there may be another podcast that's tried to steal our name every once in a while, but we are the ones with by far the most Warning Track Power Hour content out there. We have hundreds of episodes now, with hundreds of hours of content. So you can believe it, just play our old episodes and just have it on continuously for a week at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a couple weeks.
Easily.
160, there's 168 hours in a week, and we probably have
That's like
we
6 episodes, Mike. That's a
yeah, we're really, this episode's probably it's well over the hour. Maybe it's getting close to hour and a half or 2 hours right now. So we should really wrap it up. I already did the sign off, so I'm not going to get tricked into doing that again. So
Yes.
we will leave it at that. And as always, we will wish you a good day.